Hello, it's Doris with Aldi Books, and I am here with all of the nonfiction books today. I meant to post this, I don't know, like a week and a half ago, something like, but things happened. Things happened in the world. But here I am. And, this is going to be the haphazard, unprepared, speaking off the cuff, what I remember review. It's not really, these aren't really reviews. These are just, I love this book, read it kind of thing, which is, what you have come to expect from me. So if you're here, I'm sure you must like something of that, I hope. Anyway, I read just a ton of amazing nonfiction in 2020. And this list, the stack is huge. It's a huge stack over here. And it could have been twice this many, honestly. I didn't try to whittle it down. I just grabbed the books that spoke to me as I quickly flipped through my reading statistics from last year. So let's just dive in. First up, I have two books that I don't physically own. Well, I don't have them with me. I own them, but I've let my sister borrow them. So one of those is When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi, I think. And that, I think, is a very well-known book. It's an oncologist who, just as he's getting into his residency, discovers that he himself has terminal cancer. And it's just gorgeous. It hit me in all the feels, just that what it is to be human, and the arc that he goes through in his own character within himself, and the thoughts that go through him, and how he changes his approach to life and people, and the letter he wrote to his baby daughter. Oh my goodness. Anyway, my sister is a nurse, and she does a lot of home health care, so I knew she would just really relate to that and get a lot out of it. And the other one that I gave her was An Hour Before Daylight, which is a memoir written by Jimmy Carter. I love me some Jimmy Carter. I just have, I really respect what he has done with his life post-presidency. I was a child, a wee thing when he was president, but I just have such fond memories of my own father, and just the joy that was in him anytime he mentioned Jimmy Carter. My dad had a great deal of respect for Jimmy Carter, his presidency, and his life, and the way he chose to live it. And this memoir, it focuses on Jimmy Carter's early years, his childhood, growing up in a small town in Georgia. And my dad grew up in a small town in Indiana, but just reading the book, it just reminded me of so many stories my own father told from growing up in a farming community. And I just really understood why my dad loved Jimmy Carter so much after reading that book. So then I have three great books that, the Black Lives Matter narrative that was so important last year and continues to be so important this year as well. And three books that really stood out to me in that narrative were The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. This book is brilliant in showing how white society used legislation to control the populace. You know, we didn't call it apartheid, but yeah. And I think, like, I had this on my shelves for a couple years and didn't get to it because for some reason I assumed it would be like dry and academic, but it wasn't at all. This was a real pacey, engrossing read, and I just highly recommend it for understanding, for understanding the American society. And then The Blood of Emmett Till by Timothy B. Tyson. This was a real watershed moment in American history, and the mother in this book, in this story, this real life story, just the way she set aside her own grief to fight for justice. Wow. And then Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, The Origins of Our Discontents. If you haven't read Isabel Wilkerson yet, you really need to. She is the voice of our time. This book could not have come at a better moment. It is just, she's a thinker. She's such a thinker. And she takes a long time to research and understand her topic and her thoughts. And this book, like, she's already won the Pulitzer, and I would not doubt that she would win it again. She won it for The Warmth of Other Suns, and this one is just so timely, and wow. So then, I'm really into nature writing, and I read some great nature books, and you know, that has inspired me to start a nature writing book club with Heidi from My Reading Life. It's called Book Naturalist, and some of the books that have springboarded that idea were The Story of More by Hope Jaron, How We Got to Climate Change, and Where to Go From Here. Hope Jaron wrote Lab Girl, which was the memoir of her early years and university studies and becoming a biologist and setting up her own lab, and it was just amazing. And then this book is kind of the written form of some of her lessons for her college students, for her classes, and how she presents this idea of climate change and global warming and what we need to do about it. And the difference about this book for me is how it's contextualized in our own nostalgic moments, our, you know, formative years growing up, and also the hopefulness. Like, she manages to find hope in that narrative and in the human spirit, and I just really appreciate that. And I think this book is, you know, really important addition to that discussion. And then Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. So Robin Wall Kimmerer is a biologist, a university professor, and she is also an Indigenous woman, a writer, a mother. She brings all of these threads of herself together to discuss science and the environment, and it's just gorgeous. She's very poetic in her writing. I had to annotate this book. It was that good. So another one that you gotta read. And then Late Migrations by Margaret Renkl, A Natural History of Love and Loss. So this is another memoir, a lot of memoirs in my life. And this one I discovered, I think I randomly found it at a bookstore actually, but I finally picked it up to read because we were doing milkweed editions with the Indie Press Project. So that's a project where with Stephanie from Time to Read, we pick an indie press each month and read something from that indie press. So Milkweed Editions really focuses on nature writing and diversity, which, you know, is an amazing intersection for me. This one is actually a Nashville, Tennessee writer where I live. And this is really mostly looking at backyard nature and her, you know, inner dialogue with it. And she pulls in narratives from her own childhood and that of her mother and her grandmother. And the way she weaves these threads together to discuss, you know, family and, you know, the future. It's just gorgeous. And it's a really beautifully put together book as well. Her brother provides artwork for the chapters. So that one is lovely. And then I read The Swamp, The Everglades, Florida, and the Politics of Paradise by Michael Grunwald. This one really just checked all my boxes because I'm a native Floridian, born and bred in Florida. And so I really just have a heart for my home state. And then obviously I love the nature, but this one, again, books that can pull together so many topics and make them cohesive. I love that. I love books that can connect the dots. So with this one, you get historical look at the area with the Native Americans that were there, the Seminole Nation, and still are. My university, I went to Florida State. There's some glimpses of that in here. You get the environment, the Everglades, which is the topic of this book, is just a fascinating and very unique biome in the world. And then the politics of, you know, the environment and just politics in general in the state of Florida. It all weaved together to make a really fascinating and really insightful narrative, and really insightful into how politics operates, not just in Florida, but just in general. So great book. And then I've talked about this numerous times, another memoir. This is The Turkish Lover by Esmeralda Santiago. I read this with Heidi and Oliva from Seriella. And this is a Puerto Rican woman who ends up living in New York. And then in this book, she kind of lives in several locations within the States. And it's really a coming of age story. There are 3 in this series. So the first one is When I Was Puerto Rican, and then Almost a Woman. And then this is the final in the series. And Esmeralda Santiago is a gorgeous, gorgeous writer. And the way that she makes connections with her own life, again with the connections, but she really makes connections with her own life and the world at large, and kind of lets you see those things as well through the lens of your own life. So it's really, highly recommend these. And if you don't read a lot of nonfiction and you want to, this is really a delightful story narrative. So I think you'd like it. And then Erik Larson, oh my goodness. So this is his newest book, The Splendid and the Vile, a saga of Churchill family and defiance during the Blitz. I read this with my history reading buddies, Heidi and Karen from Run Right Reads, and Patrice Jones, and we just all really enjoyed this. So Erik Larson takes just 1 year of Churchill's, what do you call that, when he was prime minister during World War II, and he pulls all of these diary entries, primary sources, news reports, and he just weaves them all together and makes this lens into not just World War II or Churchill or, you know, that time period and place and event. But he shows what life was like for just your average citizen, different socioeconomic levels during that time period. And it was just fascinating. So then last year was the second year for the Booktube Prize, but the first year for nonfiction, and I found some amazing books through that process judging for the Booktube Prize. Really excited to get started. You may still be able to get in on judging that if you hurry. I'm not sure, but it's the Booktube Prize. There's a channel for that, and judging starts 1st of February with our first round, the octa finals. For the octa finals last year, I read Sea People by Christina Thompson, The Puzzle of Polynesia, and I probably this would never have gotten on my radar, not because I don't like the topic, it just was a little more obscure. I hadn't heard anybody talk about it. But this is the quest to understand who first settled the islands of the remote Pacific, where they came from, and how they got there, and how we know. So I always check about authors when I'm reading this kind of book. You know, so this is focusing on the Polynesian people and colonization. And the author, Christina Thompson, was married to, she is married to a Polynesian man. And I think that filter really shows through in the way that she approaches this topic, because this book is almost groundbreaking to me in the way that she is able to write about the Polynesian people on a level playing field with the colonizers, which is as it should be, but it's not the way it has been in the written narratives. So I just really, really appreciated that. I also was fascinated because it's really hard to understand how these people settled all of these islands that are thousands and thousands of miles from each other without modern technology, these early peoples. And it was just fascinating to read about the sciences behind figuring that out and how they may have done that. It's just really neat read. And then there were a lot of books in the Booktube Prize nonfiction that were dealing with social issues, and the Me Too movement was very prevalent in that pack of books. And the two of those that stood out to me were No Visible Bruises, What We Don't Know About Domestic Violence Can Kill Us, so by Rachel Louise Snyder. This woman did her research. She really thought about the topic in depth and processed what was going on here. And she focuses on domestic violence and not just why the victims stay, but why the abusers stay in those situations until they get to the, breaking point and explode. And it was really insightful with the police, so this is even though this doesn't deal with Black Lives Matter, it does focus on the police and ways that interaction can be improved, and weak points in the system and better focus points for that. I'm not explaining that well, but this book is great. It's really insightful. And then Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is the memoir of Emily Doe, who was sexually assaulted on campus. And she wrote that anonymous essay that went viral about that experience with the the swimmer that was, approaching the Olympic trials, and that was so much more important than her apparently to the media. But this document, like, you could tell that she had the potential when she was anonymous, that the writing was there, and she just unpacks her experience, and this is eye-opening about what sexual violence victims go through to get their voices heard. It's just hard-hitting, but so important. So important. This was a great, great book. And then I was really surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb, a therapist, her therapist, and Our Lives Revealed. So this is a book about a woman who herself is a talk therapist and has a sudden breakup that was unexpected and kind of jars her world, and how she herself goes to therapy. So she interweaves her own therapy with her therapist amongst the therapy sessions that she has with a handful of her own clients. And it was just really uplifting and life-affirming. And I think I really needed that in the midst of these other, heavier hitting topics. Not that this wasn't, a heavy hitting topic, but it was just more uplifting eventually. And it just really connected with me. And the writing style, I think the rights have been bought for this to become, a TV series, and I could totally see it playing out in my mind. The development of one of the gentlemen in this book just really touched my heart completely. So then finally, I have just a couple more that I read right as the year was ending, and they really kind of fit in with the current political climate with authoritarianism and this current fear of communism that's going around. But that is The Future is History by Masha Gessen, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia. Masha Gessen just really, really insightful. And, from Georgia themselves, they really, not Georgia, Russia, really spoke to, this is going through the fall of the Soviet Union and that brief moment of opening, and then how it kind of closed down again, and really helped me to understand what went on during those years when I was in high school and college and now. And then Secondhand Time, The Last of the Soviets by Svetlana Alexievich, where this follows, I think, 4 individuals and then a few more extra players. This one is an oral history, and Svetlana Alexievich, all of her books are oral histories where she just takes primary sources and weaves them together into a narrative. So this covers the same time period, but the two of them together really play off of each other well, and I would highly recommend that combination. So this video is a little longer than normal for me, but there was a lot of books and they were awesome. So hoping that 2021 is equally fabulous with the nonfiction, because I loved these books. They were just, yes. So anyway, I would love to hear what you thought of them if you've read them, or which ones you're interested in picking up next, potentially. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I will be back soon. Bye.